Hello, and today we'll continue with chapter 2 for Nerus. So last time we played this record for Elisa and Bidey, and then we played more of Diary. So we're about to play Aloys, and this record will be a pretty long record here, so we'll get to see plenty of Aloys and his past and how he got to be in a church. So this is like a continuation of this record down here. We got to see how Aloys and I forgot the name of Body's uncle, but he is an abbot of the church, and he here in this island because he heard about Aloys, how smart he was, so he wanted to recruit Aloys and have him join the church. So I'm going to go ahead and play this record now, which continues Aloy's story. Initializing playback. The night was as silent as still water. There were no waves, no whistling, no rustling of leaves. The boots of the guards walking on the walls were the only source of disturbance, but the resulting motion was quickly absorbed by the darkness before it could form even a ripple. Not even the moon's blue glow could penetrate this realm. In Knox Church, such perfect stillness was an object of worship. Where else would this be the case if not where they worshiped the Lord of Darkness? The dark was more than an absence of light, an absence of heat, an absence of sound, an absence of motion. The very concept of absence was dark. And so, what did they say of a monk that would disturb this sacred darkness little by little? The creak of a door opening, steps on the pavement outside, the swinging of an unlit oil lamp, and his nails grazing brick upon reaching the wall. But an absence of faith was a sign of the darkness within this man. Was he a heretic or an envoy of this domain's god? The man walked by the wall, nearly on all fours, as he made his way to a barred door. He froze when he saw a hint of light approaching closer from the other side. His lungs deflated when he saw the glow become dimmer. Almost there. The monk stepped closer as he took a key from under his sleeve. He settled it into the lock and turned it. A satisfying series of clicks followed. A scarcely known fact about Knox Church was that it has two entrances. Nowadays, the abbot would never meet with Knox personally, utilizing a magic gem to communicate with him instead. But this wasn't the case in the old days. The second entrance had been used by the first few abbots to easily access Hollow Mountain. Aloys couldn't be sure it was still there. If it wasn't, he'd go back to his cell and come up with a different plan later. Soon he ran into a door much like the one he had opened not too long ago, except that this one was covered by rust and being held closed by a chain and a padlock. Beyond it was a forest lit by the moonlight. This was it. He had a few minutes to work. Better make them count. Aloys turned on the lamp and inspected the padlock. It was a small thing. They probably had obtained it somewhere down in the village. He retrieved a pair of picks and, still holding the padlock, got to work. People change in curious ways as they grow up. They remain static in some aspects but completely turn around in others. Aloys had accepted to come to the church, or not because he was interested in old world mythology, but as he matured, his interest took a sharp turn. He still enjoyed mythology, of course, but he had also become enthralled by the people behind it. When he was little, he believed the stories about all those strange creatures, and after he realized that they were mostly fictional, he started wanting to know the reason behind such marvelous lies. Everything from the old world was documented in the church's vast archive, so it wasn't difficult to find answers. There are all there are as many reasons for the stories to exist as there are people on Earth. Cautionary tales for children, metaphors, wild retellings of mundane events. For instance, if it was common for drownings to occur in a certain river, someone would make up a monster to blame for it and spread stories about it. As a result, people would stop going to that river or be more cautious when near it, preventing future accidents. Or in a more extreme case, let us say a war between two nations was framed as a fantastic epic by the winner, as a form to both establish the winner's cultural hegemony and to justify the persecution of any dregs of the losing empire, which would be absorbed into the other's culture and territory. Not to mention that a tale of heroic monster slaying is always more palatable than one of human conflict. When he was younger, Eloy struggled with the concept of gods. He admired them for the monsters he loved so much, often were their creation. Often it was by the will of another god that a monster would meet its end. Now he understood that monsters and gods were much more similar than he initially thought. Both existed because the world needed something from them. They were tools to navigate reality with clarity or to muddle matters too terrible to speak outright. And so Alois wondered if the same couldn't be said about the seven. He didn't doubt the existence of magic. He had seen plenty of it since he had arrived at the church and was even in the process of learning some. The monk questioned the existence of the gods this magic was attributed to. But why would it be necessary to create the seven? The answer lied in the fact that Alois's world and the world of the second millennium before the cataclysm weren't so different. Despite the drastic changes Earth went through, geopolitical relationships remained mostly intact and they were still using the same economic system as a pre-cataclysm society. Most technology survived the catastrophe only to be confined to this little church. What if the seven had emerged as a way for the powerful ones from the pre-cataclysm world to remain in power? It would explain the statuses they had put humanity under. Just like in the past, the story was meant to help maintain the status quo. He had even brought up this idea of a drink with his friends and coworkers, but at most they brushed it off, saying the notion was unfathomable, as their world was ruled by faith. But thinking too hard about this conspiracy theory would only give Alois a headache. There was a better method to determine the truth, to visit Hollow Mountain and confirm if Nock was there or not. A pair of footsteps were approaching from deeper down the hallway. Just in time, the padlock opened with a click. Alois put off the lamp, removed the chain as silently as he could, and sneaked inside. The forest path was a little more arduous than he had anticipated, as it was unkempt after falling and disuse so many years ago. Still, he had the mountain's looming figure to guide him, so he wasn't worried about becoming lost. Just as his feet started growing weary, the forest opened up to reveal a sight he had only heard of thus far. At the foot of the mountain was a field of salt-like gravel, and Alois still ponded its center. Alois couldn't tell how deep it was, since the water was pitch black, making it impossible to see the bottom. It could be mistaken for oil, or, if not, for the lack of stench. Alois thought back to the stories he used to hear about the church's old traditions. It was said that at night, when the black lake turned pitch black like a pit, entrance to the interior of Hollow Mountain were open. He walked around the black lake, looking for a crevice hiding in the saddles. He stopped suddenly when he noticed one vertical opening in the mountain's skin, resembling a stab wound. It was just as dark as the lake. It gave him a feeling something was staring at him through that veil of black. But more importantly, it looked tight. It would be difficult to get through there. The monk crouched and stopped to think about this logically. Assuming that the deities were indeed made up, what he was about to do was very dangerous. He didn't have any experience with cave diving. Anything could happen once he went into the crevice. He suspected his self-preservation instincts were advising him against this idea, but he couldn't tell. All the alarms in his brain were out of service. Moreover, returning to the church empty-handed would be a waste after getting this far. With his mind made up, Aloy stood up and walked to the crevice. He would need to enter sideways to fit in. He lit the oil lamp again and started to squeeze in. Although the entrance was nearly claustrophobic, as he went deeper, Aloy found less and less resistance. Eventually, he was able to walk normally. He came out into what seemed like a large open area. He couldn't know for sure. It was too dark to see anything beyond the walls near him. Upon advancing deeper into the cave, Aloy ran into many rock formations reminiscent of tree trunks, too tall for him to see the top. It was like a rock forest. As he navigated among these pillars, a strange sensation, as if he was dipping his feet into water, invaded him. The monk wondered if he was imagining things, but soon the invisible water rose to his knees, making it difficult to move. He couldn't see the floor anymore. When he tried to back down, it was as if he was hit by a wave, pushing him against one of the pillars. The lamp didn't go off, but the fire was but a gray, blurry thing now, unable to provide any light. And so the man found himself surrounded by complete darkness. He had expected his lungs to fill with liquid and start suffocating, but that was not the case. His body quickly became accustomed to the strange weight surrounding him, and he was this the product of some strange magic, perhaps meant to deter intruders? No, that didn't feel quite right, because this darkness enveloping him had a welcoming quality to it. It was warm, peaceful. It was pleasant to move one's fingers through it, playing with the invisible substance. Always put out the now useless fire and resumed his journey, now extending his hand a few centimeters ahead to not hit any of the pillars. So difficult it was to see that the monk instantly realized something unnatural was happening when he saw a light in the distance. It was white, but not quite intense as to blind someone, like a star in the sky. The star started moving occasionally, disappearing behind a pillar. Almost as if it had noticed Aloy and was running away, or as if it was toying with him, seeing as the monk tried to chase it, but to no avail. That was until a few other lights joined it. One circle, a second circle, 6 lines beneath them, and one pointy smile. Aloy, for his part, was relieved that the damn light had stopped moving and came closer. Upon being around 3 meters away, he realized he was looking at the face. The light was now intense enough for him to make out its owner's unusual visage. Knock? What a creature, dark as the water of the black lake, towering and pointy teeth, and teeth pointy enough to inflict terror on those who would let their imagination go wild. The monster closed the distance between the two of them as a loud chirping resonated from its throat. Slowly it reached out for the monk's neck. A glance at that hand was enough to tell how powerful it was, not to mention the softness of its claw-shaped fingers. It drew circles around Aloy's belt, calling attention to his fat. But there was no immediate answer from the monk. He looked up at the monster, waiting for an answer. Eventually it cracked an even larger smile and wobbled up and down as it laughed. Its voice is hard to describe, but it was like anything Aloy had heard before in his life. Suddenly there was a sound like that of first terror before stepping back into place, and the creature opened its mouth. I see that fears are known to you, my monk, and here I was, planning to scare you away, as if you were a common intruder. The creature got closer, and Aloy felt his breathing, hear his face. It was warm, but it didn't smell of anything. Threatened to claw you to pieces or chew you up and swallow you. But such threats would fall on deaf ears. but Aloys wasn't so sure. Something new or no was lost over him. Was this what they called fear? It had been a long time since he had thought back to kids from the orphanage and how they react whenever a teacher became violent and whatnot. Did they also get this pulsing feeling in their stomach and chest? That was probably not the case, no. Whose white eyes reflected freezing cold. Well, so then, what was this? What was his heart beating so fast? He was brought back to reality by the monster, releasing his neck and taking a step back. I apologize for my lack of manners. According to human traditions, introductions are in order. What? Tell me your name, or clueless monk. Aloys. I'll knock. Dressing for your attire, you are one of my worshippers. Tell me, what possessed you to breach my domain? Aloys recovered enough composure to explain his reasons. Nock nodded as he listened to him, and once the monk finished explaining himself, he broke into laughter. What bravery, or alternatively, lack of sense you show, my monk, and embarking on such a journey just so you could spit all these blasphemies to my face. And you pretend to understand the symbols well as well. I'm sorry. Nock's lights flickered for a second. When they came back, Aloys realized he was cornered against a pillar that hadn't been there before. The god lunged at him and lifted him from his neck until his toes couldn't touch the ground anymore. The monk dropped the lamp, which broke and spilled its contents on the stone ground. As he took hold of the creature's arm, his body desperately tried to reduce the pressure of his neck on instinct. I will show you what the real god is, my monk. The monster's jaw opened wide until it looked as if his snout extended to and beyond his neck. Then, with a cracking sound, his head split vertically, as if it was a sort of perverse flower opening its four petals. From the depths of his throat, a blinding white light shone through. He pulled Aloys closer to allow him to see inside. It was a scenery from another world. Slowly, the monk was pulled closer and closer, thousands of eyes focused on him, a million teeth eager to consume them. Each wall was flesh, the flesh was alive, writhing and opening and closing. It all reached for Aloys, trying to pull him deeper. Aloys gasped for air as Nock finally let go of him, letting him fall on his butt on the hard floor. I trust that your curiosity is sated. Now go away. Be a good monk and stay in the church. Nock snapped his fingers and everything went black. A second later, Aloys found himself in his bed as if he had just woken up from a dream. His mask was hanging from his chair's back where he always left it. His lamp was now on his desk and tacked next to his papers as usual. Aloys looked at his roommate, who was submerged in a deep sleep on the other end of the room. The monk lay on his side, facing the wall, and reached under his habit. He tried to contain his moans as he stroked himself, thinking about what he had just experienced. Once he was close, he pulled the covers back and caught his load with his hand. Afterwards, he licked his hand clean of the evidence. He couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. Think a hyper-sensitive yourself will make its way to my church. I suppose I still have expected my influence to draw in someone else like me. I hope I don't offend again, but I think you might be confused, my lord. You keep calling me your kin, but I'm just a regular human being. I let out a low guttural laugh. Eyes do not lie. You must feel alone in the human world. Every day, you understand why everyone else acts the way they do, but are unable to connect with them. You compare them to yourself and you realize you don't quite work the same way. So you adapt, you imitate, but it doesn't feel genuine. Humanity, no, the children of Samael, are all worth loving. And that's something you must learn first. And being out there all your life without someone that can understand you. Well, it can be hard to love while being a fish in the wrong tank. I suppose so, yes. Still, I must insist, I am not. Where you are, my lord? Knox shifted to lay on his side and stared at the monk. I recognize the physiological differences between you and me, as well as that you are clad with a limited human perspective. But in our hearts, we are the same. Is that not why you returned? Because last night was the first time in a long time you experienced anything that felt real. The monk looked down as he contemplated his response. It's hard for me to put it into words, but I think you are mostly correct, yes. But it's strange, you keep missing we are the same, but silly, it don't refer to your divine nature. So what I want to ask is, what are you, my lord? Knox's smile widened slightly as he sat up on the couch, his eyes fierce. There's no now that encapsulates what I am. Let us create one right now. Knox tapped the table without any particular rhythm as he looked out the window to the nothingness beyond. Aloys's gaze followed his. Behind it was that darkness he was growing increasingly accustomed to. I am a void born. Is that satisfactory? Aloy's routine wasn't affected too much by his encounter with Knock. Despite developing a bad habit of oversleeping, every day he still went to the showers to clean himself, had breakfast at the refectory, offered his prayers at the church, and finally headed to the archives to visit for work. Aloys would sit in front of a computer to transcribe papers, scan and digitize pictures and objects, and upload them to the church's network for preservation purposes. Back when he just arrived here, he was surprised to discover that the Church of Knox giant library wasn't physical, but stored in servers in a room inside the archives building. Fortunately, he quickly got a hang of the technology. According to Alvaro, that was one of the advantages of being young. Aloys managed to land a job in the archives division and stayed there ever since. By now, he had developed a skill set that would allow him to move to another division if he wished to, but he wasn't interested in that kind of change. The church's many research divisions were more exciting, but Aloys didn't feel driven to scientific discovery. Recording other people's findings in modern and old world culture was interesting enough. Besides, this job allowed him to take a nap break every once in a while, assuming how co-workers wouldn't invite him to drink. Aloys sneaking out became a nightly occurrence. Knock had granted him a master key to make the whole affair easier and kept getting rid of any evidence every night, somehow. The monk instinctively didn't question the strange things he was capable of. As for the god himself, he turned out to be quite chatty. What are your thoughts on the end of the world, Aloys? Are you referring to the cataclysm? No, my nearsighted, tender friend. I speak about the events of demise in this planet. I realize humans find the cataclysm as an apocalyptic event, but it was nothing more than a slight change in atmosphere. Or I don't know if we are talking about an event that could end all life on Earth. Well, that doesn't fit either, does it? Even if all life disappeared, the planet would still be there, just without us. A glistening world would only end once the sun became a red giant and consumes it. Not cloud. I'm always amazed by humanity's capability to foresee its own demise. But allow me to be fair to your other contributions to this conversation. The meaning of the end of the world can vary depending on how it's framed. So yes, you could call a mass extinction event that. I have a feeling you are going somewhere with this. Giggling, Knock signaled to the monk to just listen and resumed his explanation. Before the cataclysm, humanity was quickly heading to such an event. It was a disaster of their own making, and they were aware of it. but because of the social constraints they had built around themselves, they were unable to stop. Since the powerful had no interest in the misery that resulted from their actions, and everyone else was too cowardly to oppose them. Maybe it would not have been the end for all humanity, but it would have changed the landscape to their detriment. I think I have read about this, yes. Would the result have been like our current world? It is hard to say, but allow me to explain how it would have accelerated the end of life on Earth. Nock had many interesting topics to talk about, pieces of information to share. The monk was fascinated. Naturally, the events of their first encounter were still fermenting in the monk's memories. Eventually, he brought this up. He enjoyed his talks with the god, but he also wished to chase the high he had gotten from the moment when Nock exposed his core to him. My lord, do we remember what happened when I first came here? Of course, your act of insubordination. Yes, well, am I forgiven for that? Alois, could it be that you are in heat? Do you intend to court me? Alois didn't think that was possible for male humans, but for now he nodded. Squinting, Nock walked over to the table and squatted on it, meeting the monk at eye level. Pitiful creature, incarcerated in a cell, flesh of Sabel's design. It is no wonder you yearn for unity. The god nodded solemnly as he ruffled the human's hair. However, sins are not forgiven so easily. Perhaps a sacrifice is in order. Sacrifice? How about this? You could sacrifice your neck. Nock pulled at Aloy's throat. After a moment, something like a gem appeared in that same spot, and from it, a material like leather sprung out, forming a ring that encased Aloy's neck. The god didn't look convinced. Alois laid back and relaxed, intending to let the god take whatever else he saw fit. You have so much I could take, Alois. Perhaps one of your 5 senses or organ or part of your cognitive capabilities. I'll bite if you feel inclined. Nock opened his mouth, and just as he was about to pull Alois in, he jerked back and shook his head, sending some slobber flying. Wait, have you ever had sex? No, my lord. I see. Mortals put great weight on if their bodies have met intimacy. It can be a matter of life or death in some places. Yes, that will be a fitting sacrifice, and it will fulfill your needs. 1 bird, 2 stones. The saying is the other way around, my lord. Thank you for the correction, dear Alois. The lights went out. Nock shoved Alois back and instinctively gasped when he noticed the chair's back wasn't behind him anymore. He fell onto something soft, and the god crawled on top of him shortly after. The god's glow returned, revealing they now were in a dark church cell. I trust this will be a comfortable setting. Now, how do we do this? Excuse me? I understand sex for you is penetrative in some capacity, but how exactly does it work? Will any orifice do? Nock inspected the monk's ears and nose as he said this. Do nails count as orifices? What about your skin pores? Or should I carve a new hole for this? How thoughtful of you, my lord, but no. You will usually penetrate a man's mouth or anus. Aha! Nock gave Alois enough space so he could undress. He caressed his thighs, belly, and chest as the monk got rid of his habit, licking his teeth in anticipation. Plop. Alois was in the middle of lowering his underwear when he heard a familiar sound of flesh tearing. The god hunts over a white crack that wasn't there before, spreading across his back. Are you alright, my lord? Do not be afraid. I am simply looking for an appropriate organ for this. There was a whipping sound as a lump appeared in his back, tearing the crack wider. This cell is so cramped. The god's muscles bulged, or rather, became larger. His claws and teeth grew pointier, new eyes started popping out near the cracks along his back and tail, and his bones rapidly snapped and reformed as they adapted to his growing size. Finally, a series of white, several foot-long tentacles exploded free from the lump, eliciting a relieved sigh from Nock and halting his mutation. One of the prehensile appendages brushed Aloys's cheek, thanking him for his patience. I had to modify myself a little. Is this appropriate? Aloys answered by pulling his underwear down, revealing his hard. He opened his legs and allowed Nock to crawl on top of him. Human bodies are meant to break once they are stressed past a certain point. Aloys couldn't comprehend the fact that his body could take this much, and so that damage was reflected in his overwhelmed mind instead. One tentacle wasn't stuffing him from either end, was instead playing with his and balls or massaging his chest. Nock wasn't familiar with human bodies in this manner, so he was taking his time exploring him inside and out. He was only allowed brief moments to breathe when Nock judged he was nearing his limit. He kept mentioning something about the monk's lung capacity and training him. He couldn't catch every word, but the intent was clear. He had already came many times, but Nock wasn't stopping. Maybe he didn't know when to stop, or maybe since this was meant as a sacrifice, it mattered little when the monk's body had enough. This wasn't how sex should go. It was a crude imitation by a creature with a twisted understanding of both human intimacy and his role as a deity. No common human being would have found this experience enjoyable. It was fortunate it was Aloys he was fucking. My Aloys, when you first came here, I threatened to eat you. You must understand this. I should not exist in this world. We do not have souls in the void. We are intrinsically different. Nakar's voice had a playful, hushed tone. He spoke directly to his good monk's ear. Aloys could understand every single word this time. I instinctively feel inclined to correct that difference. Interacting with humans in person is always a struggle with that instinct, a fight to not devour. If it isn't lethal for foreign-borns, but bodies like yours are small and frail, they become lost very easily. But even if I do lose control, it is all right. You are just flesh, nerves, and souls are instilled with information. Accidents. Even souls are not as irreplaceable as some think. Accidents aren't too different from DNA or the patterns of electricity traveling through your brain. Like any other substance, it is malleable. And exactly because you are small and frail that it is easy to remake you. If I ever devour you, I could always take your soul and rebuild you from the ground up. Is that an appealing prospect? Do you want me to and continue to be such a good boy? Perhaps I shall allow you to honor in some distant future. Do you want to know what being a real monster feels like? As if it was an illusion, Nock's hand phased through Aloys' chest and into him. A bolt ran through the monk's body, forcing him to release what little contact his prostate. Slowly, Nock pulled his hand back. His many tendrils started retreating inside his body, and all the extra eyes closed as he returned to his original size. Aloys was unresponsive. Greetings. How are you feeling? It was the first time Nock asked that upon finding the monk. Aloys had taken off his mask and was rubbing his eyes. He was still sore all over. It felt like he didn't sleep at all last night, despite passing out after his rough session of repenting for his sins. Even his co-workers had taken notice of his sorry state and prepared extra coffee for him during their shift. He had considered skipping his nightly visit, but in the end he mustered just enough drive to come all the way here. I'm still a little out of it after last night. It was very intense, my lord. Do you remember everything? Up until we finished? Yes. I see. Very good. Knox snapped his fingers and his lights flickered. In the dark cell, Knox sat down on the bed and signaled the monk to join him. It looked as if Alois would pass out again when he lay down, using the Knox laps as a pillow, but somehow he remained awake. The guard caressed his hair, letting him relax in silence. Knox wouldn't say it, but he was overjoyed to see Alois return after what he told him last night. He would have picked him up and hugged him hard enough to break his spine if not for him looking so tired. Knox wanted to help him relax that night instead. Alois. How do you enjoy your free time? You know, I enjoy reading, yes. I have a bit of a vivid imagination, so I like to draw scenes from the books I've read. I'm not too good at it. I understand that art classes are one at the church of many perks. Will you be interested in attending them? It's just a way to pass time. I'm not sure I want to go away just for that. The monk took hold of Knox's long tail and hugged it as he let out a long yawn. After a while, Knox lay down with him and closed his eyes. It had been a long time since the guard had allowed himself to sleep, but he wanted to for just one night. He wondered if the dreams would intertwine, just like back when he slept alongside his kin, submerged in the void. During his time in the Archives Division, Alois sensed a pattern when it came to eras long past. An order would be established to bring security and comfort to everyone. But these systems were designed to benefit favored groups while allowing outsiders to fall outside of their bubbles. This would create stress and unrest, which would grow until it exploded into violence. This process was often repeated multiple times, wearing down the system, which then would be completely taken over, replaced, or would seek a compromise. Compromises rarely changed anything, merely stalling the exit of the current system. Change in the factors leading to it usually manifested in gruesome ways. But even then, people had a hard time accepting change, so they would settle for something not too different from what came before. As a result, the same would happen again. The church's archives were a kaleidoscope, reflecting the same events from different angles as it spun. With every spin, there'd be small differences, but the motion would never stop. And so the monk wondered, was there a current world a continuation of that same kaleidoscope, or was he living somewhere else altogether? Besides the abominations that resulted from deals with demons, this world wasn't very violent. Major wars hadn't broken out in centuries, but economic inequality still existed. A big part of why the churches still held influence this day were the resources that they had amassed following the cataclysm, which alongside the seven's authority allowed them to play roles in society that would be hard to replace. Smith's church had it rough now that human governments competed with it, but because of their connection with Knox church, Smith's church would always have an edge. Similarly, Earth's church owned infrastructure and instruments that allowed it to give housing and food to those less fortunate, helped the hunters from Fire's church and run hospitals. All this on a global scale. Such a large operation couldn't be led by humans. This was possible only because they were united under Earth's banner. An entity outside of this world, without creed, without interest, outside of helping others. Not to mention their ability to grant magic. Although Knox claimed to be an alien even among the other gods, these were traits all of them shared, and that made their world possible. Still, sacrifices had to be made to get here. Even if they didn't use violence, the Seven had created one-sided relationship of dependency with humanity, which was just as coercive. And despite their best efforts, people were still falling through the cracks. After all, they had based their world on an imperfect model designed to allow just that. It was just a matter of time before the voices of those left behind made themselves known. What Alois wondered was what they would be reclaiming. One day, Alois was summoned by the abbot's son Enrique. The young man dressed up in an outfit not too different from his father's and had a kind look in his eyes. However, the monk noticed a sharpness in his gaze that told him this man's character wasn't too different from Alvaro's, as much as he tried to hide it. Alois imagined he was the abbot's splitting image when he was younger. "Welcome, Alois. I apologize for summoning you on such short notice. There's no problem." After Alois sat down on the chair in front of his desk, the crocodile took out a notebook and a pen. "I've been looking for opinions from trusted members of our church on how to improve management in the following years. I'd like you to answer a few questions." Alois shifted slightly and tilted his head. "Excuse me, but I am a trusted member," as he said. "Of course. My father doesn't let just anyone work in the archives. I believe he places a great deal of faith in you." Overall, the man had very one-of-the-mill questions. He asked about Alois' work conditions and material condition of the church and what he thought about the abbot and the rest of the administration. Alois answered most questions with measured optimism, especially when it came to the staff. As you may already know, lately most of the churches have been losing ground in the outside world. Although we might be an exception due to our secluded nature, what are your thoughts to improve this situation? Well, I believe the churches must continue to do their best, to do the best they can. Although we might see some opposition from individuals and governments, there is no reason the churches and society at large can't coexist in the future. There were plenty of reasons that it wasn't possible, but Alois didn't want to risk getting into a discussion. That's true. However, there are groups of citizens that strongly oppose the churches, citing that their guidance has removed humanity's capacity to make their own choices, or even claiming that the seven are imposter gods. What do you think about this? Perhaps because of the topics the monk had been thinking about lately, his response came out worded stronger than he intended. Well, I imagine that if such a movement gained traction, it would be a complicated matter to deal with. It wouldn't be strange if active opposition escalated into one group using force to subdue the other. The churches would try to suppress them, of course. Some annoyance started creeping up Alois' spine. Fortunately, the crocodile simply nodded and grinned as he wrote down something. "That's all. Thank you very much, Alois. Your contributions will be very valuable." After a handshake, he sent the monk off. Alois felt relieved the ordeal was over, but Enrique's reaction to that last question left him wondering what the purpose of the interview was. "Alois, may I lay eggs in you?" Nock was lying down while Alois sat on his lap. The god buried deep enough in him that he could feel his guts being stirred, so he could be forgiven for needing to double take. "Excuse me, you can do that? And of course, it's a means through which human beings reproduce, yes? I took that into account when making this set of genitals." The god beamed with pride. "You really think of everything, my lord, but I'm not ready for that responsibility." "I suppose so. I use blanks then. I'm interested in exploring your potential use at the hatchery." Of course, the tentacle expanding against his entrance before the bolts forced its way inside the silver of Alois' spine. In a perverse flash of inspiration, Nock had positioned the tendril in such a way each egg he inserted would hit the human's prostate. It quickly drove Alois over the edge. As the monk had enough For the night, he asked the god if they could stop. Nock agreed, although not without declaring that Alois could hold more of his offspring and that he'd find his limit one of those nights. Incidentally, they spent the following minutes cuddling as Alois slowly pushed the eggs out. Nock rubbed his face against the monks, lit them, and kissed him the entire time. Alois wondered if voidborns were the ones that went in heat, but the prospect didn't make much sense to him. It didn't sound like they needed to reproduce, even if they could, as Nock had proven tonight. Perhaps I'll ask him later. He's so fascinating. Alois lazily opened his eyes in response to Nock shaking him and whispering his name. The god was touching noses with him. Good morning. Yes. Are you prepared to go back? Maybe. The monk was tempted to close his eyes and go back to sleep, but his sense of duty impeded it. At least he had some time to speak with Nock while he got dressed. Remember our conversation about Smith's church? I won't go there just to learn to draw. But it would be a different story if I could be transformed. Nock glanced at him as he lay lazily on the bed. As Alvaro and his family were, for instance. Yes, although, if I'm not mistaken, that kind of blessing hasn't been granted in a long time. Not on large scale, no, but there are exceptions. I could persuade Smith into granting you a new form if you wish so. I would adore transforming you into a more fitting shape with my own hands as well, but it would be difficult to explain to the others. Nock smiled widened. On the top of Smith's church, they do offer werewolf and vampire programs now. That could be interesting. I've always been a fan of werewolves. Looking like one would be amazing. I don't think I would ever turn back to my human form unless I needed to. Is that strange? I will support you in your surpassing the human body, Alois. Alois was ready to go, so Nock brought him back to the mountain's cave in a blink. They were in the middle of saying their goodbyes when they noticed a set of footsteps. Sound didn't travel far in there, so it surprised Alois, who hadn't heard anything like this so far. The steps became more frenetic, and then stopped as if their owner realized their presence had been detected. Hello? Come out, we know you are there. After a few seconds, the sounds resumed, drawing closer. From the shadows, a small figure emerged. A monk? Alois didn't remember ever seeing this monk in the abbey. No wonder Nock's church had been the largest facilities. Nock's church had both the largest facilities in population. He couldn't know everyone. But he found this boy off-putting for different reasons. What was he doing here, and why did he handle him with such a lack of humility? Nock, I've been looking for you. We were supposed to have a meeting last night, remember? The boy glanced at Alois. What is happening? My apologies, Obley. It escaped my mind entirely. I was busy last night, you see. Excuse me, I'm Alois from the Church of Nock. What's her name? The boy lowered his gaze, his lips pursed. I'm sorry, they call me Frank. Could you two explain what is going on here? But that's not what Nock just calls you. It is almost dawn. Let us reconvene later this night. After a moment, the smaller monk's shoulders relaxed, and he nodded in agreement. I will be looking forward to seeing you tonight, Alois. Yes, my lord. Nock raised his hand and snapped his fingers. During breakfast and dinner, Alois kept an eye out for the monk he had met at Hollow Mountain, but to no avail. After the sunset, he sneaked out of his cell and made his trip to the mountain. The darkness of Hollow Mountain welcomed Alois, soon to be followed by Nock's Toothy smiled in a hug that took the monk's feet off the ground. Frank joined them soon after, at which point Knock transported them to a more comfortable location to talk. The three sat around a pale campfire in the middle of the forest. The fire flickered its light, unable to reflect even on its guests. Frank looked displeased somehow, and his expression only became more grim the more he heard from Knock. I see, and to think this has been happening for months. Although now that I heard the story, I wonder why I even asked. Because you suspected me of plotting behind your back? I won't deny it. If I may ask, who are you really, Frank? You don't strike me as a common monk. It seems to me like you two are walking on eggshells now. The uncomfortable grimace returned to Frank's face. He looked at Knock as if expecting him to say something. I have not told you everything about my duties, Alois. Something besides your duty as a deity, I presume? Knock hunched closer. Frank didn't look any less tense, but didn't interrupt the god. This predates me becoming one of the seven. I'm here to fulfill a promise. Mine. And what sort of promise? To bring Samel home. Eons ago, before this world's fake stars started shining, a mother gave birth to a 3-year-old child. The mother was a member of an accursed species called Aeons. The Aeons were born amidst the purest of lights, but they could never become a source of light themselves, for they were incomplete. Moreover, the darkness beyond filled the Aeons with dread, so they stuck close to the light, which they decided was comforting and good. The Aeons started worshipping the sacred sun that gave birth to them. They reached out forward and gave it a name, Abraxas. Suddenly, Abraxas changed. Its shape unwinded into that of a long snake. The snake was split into two from head to tail, and the two howls danced and intertwined until they formed a shape similar to the sun it once had been. Having determined the existence of good and evil, the Aeons strived to improve their lives. They came up with rules that would allow them to remain under the sunlight. The most important of them all said as follows: we are incomplete, thus we must search for a complementary light in others. So you desire to create life, you must ensure your combined splendor is second only to that of the sacred sun. But eventually a second Aeon, Sophia, realized the terrible truth. The rulers they imposed on themselves reflected while Abraxas slowly snuffing out its light by contaminating it with subjectivity. The Aeon's decline into the darkness was inevitable. No matter how close a piece of ember tries to remain close to the fire, it will go out sooner or later. In fact, the ember's best hope was to fly far away in hopes of finding matter to burn and prolong its life. All the Aeons were accomplishing with their rays was to take their precious sun down with them. And so, Sophia became determined to reveal the truth to her kin. Alone she headed to the border of the world and gave birth to her son. Soon after, she was discovered with a 3-eyed child in her eyes. Horrified, the Aeon locked her up and gauged out the child's third eye before throwing him into the darkness in hopes he would be forgotten. The child was blind. Although Abraxas was a lone star in the void, he was unable to see it. Yet he had a recollection of someone holding him, and so he cried, unable to understand why he was alone. He called out for his mother, for anyone to save him. And that was when he drew us in. Back then, we did not have names, and neither did the child, but he appeared to be familiar with the concept, so he proposed for all of us to name each other. We indulged him, as we found the prospect amusing. He named me Knock. He named my friend Doro. He named our Lord. Where is it again? It has been such a long time since I had thought of that name, and cannot recall it. Proceeding, we debated about what suited the child. Because he couldn't see us, only hear us, we called him Samel. Samuel was happy living with us for a time, but much like the rest of his kin, he always felt incomplete. Particularly, he was afflicted with nostalgia for the light he briefly saw before the other aeons harmed him. He did not worship Abraxas. What he longed for was just to see again. One day he claimed he had found a solution for his conundrum and told us he would leave our journey, but that he would be back soon. He never came back. Although I cannot say what gave him the idea, he created this world full of creatures he could see. But none of his creations were smart or had the will to live. All of them would destroy themselves as soon as he brought them into the world. Samuel's body was made of matter just like theirs, but he had something they lacked, a soul. So he took a fragment of his soul and gave it to his children. With this method, Samuel created true life. However, children continued to meet tragic and gruesome ends. To make matters worse, the Aeons took notice of his world and vowed to destroy it since they considered it a mockery of Brax's creations. Bound down by his love for his creations, the terrible fate that torments him, and the threat of the Aeons, Samuel became trapped here. An unspeakable amount of time has gone by since. For an unspeakable amount of time we have watched over him. We cannot see him, we cannot talk to him, but we can still hear him. He is lonely and tired, and so we will bring him back home. That is what I promised to my Lord. Oh, why does his name elude me? Not played with his antenna, wearing a quizzical look. Alois brought a hand to his chin. If I may, how are you planning to accomplish this? You must not be familiar with teleporters. They were impressive pieces of descendant technology that became abandoned upon safe-sitters adopted them for their own needs. Safe-sitters, the beings you know as demons. I shall tell you this tale at a later time. You will find it enjoyable. Frank clicked his tongue at that comment and looked away. Doc explained that due to past events, the wall separating Earth from the void had become thinner. One more teleporter opened a breach, it would open a tear that would rapidly ravage this world, much like a bubble bursting and free Samuel in the process. This was his Lord's plan. Once knock was done, Frank turned slightly to Aloys' direction. I suppose that sounds logical. But you mentioned that the teleporters had been abandoned. Destroyed, rather, but yes. Now I know the leader of the safe sitters came up with most of the operation. He knew this would require tact, which is why part of my role was infiltrating the Archons, the one humans call the Seven, by being discovered by Temp. Once here, I would find recruits that believed in some phony cause he made up so that they would do my bidding. It took many centuries, but I managed to locate a teleporter in a repairable state, deep underground. For years now, Bohemian millions have been performing smuggling operations to procure the necessary materials to repair it. It is almost done. Currently, we are waiting for Nominal to do his part. He glanced at Frank. Do you bring news? He said he's waiting for the right time again. Frank, if I may ask, what is your role in all this? At this point, I might as well tell you. Allow me to introduce myself properly. As Frank removed his mask, his body went through a transformation. His skin changed to black and white scales, his skull transformed into that of a reptile, his little fingers vanished. My name is Obley. I'm the battery. I'll be providing the teleporter with the power needed to create a breach when the time arrives. Obley had been gauging Aloy's reaction, or lack of thereof, throughout the conversation, this latest reveal included. At this point, he couldn't be surprised at the monk's apathy. You don't seem surprised. No, although I suppose this does explain the way you handle yourself. I hope this isn't rude, but you didn't strike me as a common monk. You don't strike me as that either. Tell me, are you not bothered by anything you heard today? Are you not afraid? You did catch that if we go ahead with this, everything you know would be destroyed, yes? Yes, but I'm not afraid. Well, I see now why Nock wants to keep you around. The descendant got up and turned away. May I take you back to the cave? Thank you, but I know the way back. Let's meet again next week. The guard nodded and Obi walked away, disappearing into the saddles. What a curious sensation did Nock's skin give, although it always felt human, almost as if it was coated in some slippery substance but rough when rubbing it. It made a nice contrast with those slick tentacles of his. When they were alone together, Aloys wouldn't tire of exploring every little curve of his body, feeling how they interacted with the roughness. Perhaps similarly, Nock had developed a habit of nibbling him. Although considering all the slobber, in his case he was probably hungry. The god cursed under his breath and went lower, putting his long tongue to work on the monk's cock. No doubt he wouldn't have resisted sticking his teeth in his flesh otherwise. Nock? Aloys spoke in between coarse brows. I've been thinking about Samel. Something doesn't add up. You said he's bound down by his love for his creations, but if he destroyed this world, a chance of going up his rear made the monk unable to speak further. After a second, Nock climbed on top of him, looking him in the eye. Aloys, my dear Aloys, you are perceptive as always. You are touching on a question that has been tormenting even me. Destroying all his creation will certainly harm Samel. However, if left alone, he will suffer nonetheless. The Lord thinks it is preferable to free him, but I am not so certain. Spending time with you as a guardian deity has led me to develop compassion toward humanity, so I understand. Truth be told, I love you too. All of us, especially you, Aloys. But yes, all of you. And I do not see a future where Samel will be happy with your demise. What is your opinion on this? The monk was trying his best to answer, but it was hard with all the attention his guts were getting. He wriggled under the god's gaze, failing to make way for words amidst the moans. Well, you do not need to answer now if you are not certain. Did not notice the light slowly draining from Aloys' eyes at that moment? Or did he take no issue with it, because as a fellow monster he shared the same kind of dark impulses? Or perhaps he ignored it because he was looking for a way out. Samel's dilemma presented him with two options. Should he side with his fellow Voidborns or defend this world's inhabitants? Unable to make a choice, Nock might have been looking for someone to choose for him. In Aloys' opinion, that third guess was the correct one. Nock often talked about fascinating knowledge he acquired throughout his long life, or by being a Voidborn. But of all those things, the one that fascinated Aloys the most was him claiming that the beings in this world were loved, and that he shared that love. Somewhere along the way, Nock had become a human being. In these last few months, Aloys had explored the depths of monsterhood through him. A monster and a human had swapped hearts, creating a bond that quietly waited for someone to light its fuse. Okay, so got to learn about Samel, who is the god that created Earth and humanity. He's the one that Obi talked to a couple videos ago. So he created the whole world, and he was outcast by the Aeons, I believe. And he was sent to the void. Kind of like being exiled because they view him as being an abomination because he had like 3 eyes. So he was sent to the voidborn, and apparently, Nock, the god Nock, he's a voidborn as well, and he wants to free Samel. But doing that means creating some kind of breach between the void and Earth, I think. Some kind of breach, and by doing that, it will destroy the world. It will destroy the world and all humanity. Though it will free Samel. Now, Nock might be using Aloys to decide whether to go ahead with that play or not. Like, because he mentioned that he has gained capacity for humanity, and since knowing Aloys, being with Aloys, he's gained a lot of capacity for humanity. Like, he did say he loves humanity, and that he loves Aloys. Aloys, he doesn't seem to be all that fazed by the fact that the world's about to come to an end. For some reason, I don't know. It seems like he really cares about having some kind of companionship with Nock, and he's very loyal to him, like referring to him as Lord or Master, I think. But it seems like very loyal. He does worship him, so yeah, he kind of have to be loyal. But he wasn't all that fazed by what he heard about his world being destroyed, and it seemed like even Obley acknowledged that. Like he, you not really all that fazed by your world and everything you knew, everything you know being destroyed. So this what we saw makes sense now with Obley. We got to see a sprite of him now, what he really looks like now. Well, we always saw the sprite of him back in chapter 1, but nobody knew that was Obley. But we now know that this is Obley. And we now know how he and Frank were paired up, and the reason for him coming to this island. And the reason why is because there's a plan that involves freeing Nerus from the void. So looks like what's going to happen is that Samel's going to free. Well, what's his name? Nock. Well, what Nock's going to do is he's going to go to the void and free Samel from it, and he'll also get Nerus as well, so he can be reunited with Obley. So I think that's what the plan is. This explains the reason why Obley is here. So, in chapter 1, where there's a big transition into a new day, it tells you, say it in red, how many days are left. So that's what that meant. Like, there's only so many days left until the end of the world comes. Well, supposedly, anyway. So the Aeons want the Earth destroyed because they look at it as kind of like an abomination. And Obley is kind of like the battery for the breach, I think. He's the one that kind of makes the breach happen. So Obley refers to himself as a battery. So he'll be used for this to happen, this whole plan to go into force. So what's going to happen ultimately? I mean, is Aloy's going to sit by and let the world be destroyed? Because while Nock does love Aloy's, if he is successful in what he does, then Aloy's will die. Everybody here will die, and both of them will not be with each other. I mean, Aloy's will be dead, and Nock will have to find love and companionship with somebody else. So, yeah, this basis is a brief moment between Aloy's and Nock. You know, them loving each other and doing sexual stuff and sexual intercourse, but once the plan becomes successful, then that will stop. Okay, so there's still plenty more of this story with Aloy's and Nock and Oba now. This record is like very long, like almost 2 hours really, so the other two records were very short, but this one is very long. So we'll finish off this record next time. So thank y'all very much for watching. Bye.